Hello and welcome to the Cubs on Deck podcast. I am one of your hosts. My name is Greg Huss, and today I am joined by broadcaster number 4. We're here for the final season preview of the Myrtle Beach Pelicans. I'm joined by broadcaster Sam Weiderhaft. Sam, how's it going, buddy?
It's good, man. Awesome to be on the show, as always. And, man, I got some big shoes to fill. The first 3 were great. So, excited to be last but not least here in this string of affiliates.
You get to bring up the rear, but you get to talk. I mean, it's fun. It's fun talking about Myrtle Beach. Always one of my. I got my Pelicans hat on. You got your Pelicans hat on. I got my Diamond Dog shirt on. For those of you guys watching on YouTube, so I'm minor leagued out right now. I'm really excited to talk Myrtle Beach Pelicans baseball. If you guys out there listening wanted to go back and listen to the other previews, we have the Iowa Cubs preview, the Tennessee Smokies preview, and the South Bend Cubs preview with Alex, BK, and Max. Those are all terrific. But we're getting ready. It's almost opening day, man. We're by the time the next episode drops, the Iowa Cubs will have played their opening day game. Myrtle Beach, South Bend, and Tennessee will follow soon behind that. Man, I'm just excited for baseball to start. So we're gonna follow the same kind of script that we followed with the previous episodes here. We're gonna get into the starting pitchers, the bullpen, and the position players towards the very end of this episode. But while I got you on here, I'm going to lead off the same way I did with the other guys. I'd love to hear what your favorite memory from last year's team, because last year's team in Myrtle Beach was like absolute. I mean, the slogan ended up being like the birds are hot because the Myrtle Beach Pelicans were a blast to watch last year, man. And so I'd love to hear your favorite memory, your favorite moment, your favorite aspect of that team from a year ago.
Dude, could I just say the whole first half? I mean,
wild.
Winning 47 games in that first half was incredible. But, yes, so many memorable moments in 2022, and unfortunately didn't end the way we wanted it to. But, I think if I have to really narrow it down, I'll go with the 2 no-hitters because those were actually –
Oh, is that it?
Okay, right. I mean, let me mention the 24-run game against Salem, a 12-game winning streak. What else? I think 2 no-hitters is just, and it's kind of crazy to say, like you said, like just that's it. But they were the first 2 no-hitters thrown at home by the Pelicans ever. That had never happened before. And, the first one was just, it went by like that. It was like a 2-hour game against Columbia and just killed it. Jake Reindl, Adam Lasky, Walker Powell just had a great game. And that was really fun. And, that being my first no-hitter call was definitely memorable. And then we do it again later on in July with 5 completely new pitchers. Ethan Hearn caught both games, but just 2 really memorable games and just really fun to be a part of in a season that was just full of so many just awesome moments. I think those 2 kind of stuck out, and especially how good the pitching staff was. And Clayton Mortensen had a great staff really throughout the year, and just got those guys ready and showed a lot of improvement throughout the season.
You're entering your 3rd season with the Myrtle Beach Pelicans, right? Do you feel like you're kind of coming to grips with the entire system and a good feel of the Cubs organization, fans, and all that good stuff now that you're in year 3?
Yeah, it's super cool. I mean, just realizing how big this fan base is and how much they care. Just about every affiliate. Like, we got fans rooting for the Arizona Complex League team and the Pelicans and all that. And I think getting to go to CubsCon this year and getting to go to spring training really kind of opened my eyes with just how passionate this whole fan base is. But yeah, it's a great team to be a part of, a small part of. And, there's great stops at every affiliate. I've been able to connect with really everybody at every stop of the way. So, yeah, I couldn't be more grateful to be where I'm at. And, it's a great organization.
You mentioned spring training that you got to go to, and you went a couple weeks ago. We're recording this on the 23rd. You went, a couple weeks ago. That had to be a blast. It looked like you were having, honestly, a blast. I don't know if Max mentioned it during the podcast or if it was off air when we were done recording, that you holding up a microphone in that video to the cactus and asking a cactus if this was like, how many times have you been to spring training, was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Like, that was terrific. You just looked like you were having a blast down in Arizona.
Dude, it was something else, man. I told Hunter Horenstein, who went with me, I was like, I love cactus. I just love desert scenery. So going out there and just being in that whole environment was just great to begin with. But I go, hey man, like whenever I see a cactus, we're gonna stop and I'm gonna ask it a question. And there was one right outside Sloan Park, so we knocked that out. Really riveting question, but just no, the whole trip was an incredible experience. I mean, just getting to the Cubs complex, it gave me a better understanding of where we're getting these guys from, right, at the single A level, coming from Arizona, and what their day is kind of like, what their routine is. Got to see the facilities and got to see the fields, and that just kind of gave me a better understanding of what it's like. But getting to go watch the major league games, and saw Jeremiah Estrada pitch with the big league club, and he was a Pelican my first year. Jordan Wogu was out there late in one game and got to see him. So that was great. And then you throw on top of it 2 World Baseball Classic games that we got to go to in Phoenix at Chase Field. I mean, It doesn't get any better than that. It was, go to USA Mexico, and you got 50,000 fans in a packed stadium, and they're all chanting "Ole, ole, ole, ole" at the end of the game. Like, that is an environment I've never seen before. And then USA Canada, and Jared Young hits a home run, so that was kind of cool to see. And so does Mike Trout, my favorite player. So, yeah, just overall fantastic trip. Got to go to In-N-Out for the first time in a few years, so got my fix there. And I can't wait till hopefully the next time.
Were you down there at the same time as the Taylor Swift concert, and did you not go?
Dude, okay, all right. So no, it was the weekend after, and I just didn't put 2 and 2 together. I mean, if I would have thought ahead, maybe I would have went to the Pelicans and been like, hey, we should push this trip back a week. We got a big concert in Glendale that I'd really like to attend. Like, we'll do work, right? We will interview whatever, we'll do whatever content we need. But that night, Taylor Swift's playing, and I got to go.
You could have asked Taylor Swift about the birds.
Yeah, I bet she has a lot of opinions on that.
If the Myrtle Beach Pelicans were a Taylor Swift song, what Taylor Swift song would they be?
Oh man, I think last year "Sparks Fly." I think that definitely goes with it. Just with the home runs hit and how many, like I said, great moments we had. I think "Sparks Fly" definitely fits into it. But everything I saw on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter, it was a great concert. So unfortunate I wasn't able to attend, but the World Baseball Classic's pretty nice too.
Yeah, World Baseball Classic, T Swift concert. I mean, very comparable. Both life-changing experiences for sure.
No, for sure. And I've already seen Taylor Swift, and I hadn't been to the WBC before, so maybe we just need to mix it up.
There you go. So we were talking before we came on air and started recording here, how you have interesting setup where you're in Myrtle Beach, you're in the lowest level of like full season ball. So you have an interesting setup where you're seeing new prospects come up to the full season affiliates. You're seeing new prospects come up to your level that you haven't seen any real highlights of. Like, you haven't seen clips on MILB TV. You have information on them, but you don't get the benefit that Max and BK do up in South Bend, or Alex all the way up in AAA. I'm having a whole lot of information on these guys as they come up to the system. Did going out of spring training help you with this? Give you some stories on guys as you're going to see them in Myrtle Beach this year? How difficult is that kind of setup for you?
Yeah, I learned a little bit. I put some feelers out and, just kind of asked who's been looking good, who are the guys that, we think are going to start in Myrtle. But it's definitely a tough job, but at the same time, I love it because we are the first stop right at in the affiliates, and you're just kind of introducing everybody to the Cubs fans. I know everybody knew a lot about Pete Crow Armstrong coming into last year, but he was playing in the Florida Coast League with the Mets organization, and then gets traded over to the Cubs and, kind of makes his full season debut with us, which I thought was awesome to kind of start that off. Kevin Alcantara as well, James Triantos, all those guys from last year, they start off with us, and I'm the one that gets to tell the stories and kind of introduce them to the Cubs fans. And I think that's a really cool job. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there's so many guys that we just have not a lot of intel on, not a lot of information. You kind of got to go digging every once in a while. I remember Alfredo Zaraga last year, when he comes to us, it wasn't a lot on him, and I really had to dig through. And there was a Spanish article. I can't remember what country it was from, but it was in Spanish, and I Google Translate the whole thing, and I ended up getting kind of a story on him. He went to the Royals tryout, and they weren't too impressed with him. They didn't end up signing him, and they just said he was undersized. And then the Cubs take a chance on him, and we saw how electric he was until he got traded to the Rays this past offseason. But It's stuff like that. You really got to go digging for information. You got to ask the coaches and what they think of them. But like I said, at the same time, I love it. I love having, this is the first stop, and it's also their first taste of, what being in the media is like, and doing interviews and stuff like that. So it's definitely a learning process for the players and myself, but I really wouldn't have it any other way. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I think that a few years ago, for a while, Eugene was that it seemed to be everybody's not necessarily favorite affiliate to watch, but I think that it held a special place in people's hearts because it was the first time we got to see guys on MILB TV. It was that short season ball. It was your first taste of some prospects, and the added benefit of Eugene was they were on the West Coast, and so you could have some late night baseball to watch that was outside of the other affiliates. But I think that it's been interesting to see Myrtle Beach has now become that kind of not necessarily a fan favorite, but just it holds a special place where it's you're seeing these guys for the first time, and I think it's appropriate that it's full season now, and with you calling the games, it's a special kind of thing to watch on TV or on MILB TV, I guess. But
no, it's a frame of reference too. I mean, we're going to be looking back years from now and seeing clips of Kevin Alcantara when he, before he added all the muscle that he's about to add. And man, he was so dominant in single A. Look how skinny he was, but now he's this huge guy. That's what we're going to be looking at. So
yeah,
it's kind of something to kind of base your progress off of, which I also think is pretty cool.
Yeah. All right, man. I don't want to delay this digging deep into some of these players here because I think the preview of the Myrtle Beach Pelicans team is going to be super interesting. I'll lead off here like I had the other episodes, just as a precursor, as a warning to fans out there that this, once again, I know you're probably getting tired of hearing this. We don't know what the rosters look like as of right now, and especially for Myrtle Beach. I think Myrtle Beach is especially difficult to predict rosters going into the season on opening day. But we don't know what the actual rosters will look like. Sam doesn't know what it looks like. I don't know what it looks like. So everybody we're talking about today, we're just kind of going under the assumption that these guys get assigned to Myrtle Beach, but a lot can happen between now and April 6th. So opening day this year for the Myrtle Beach Pelicans is on Thursday, April 6th at 7:05 Eastern time. You guys are playing Charleston this year on opening night. I think you guys led off the year with Charleston last year. Right?
It's been the past 3 years we've been taking on the River Dogs now.
Big old rivalry there. So we're starting off against Charleston, and we'll lead off here today, like the other episodes, with the starting pitchers. And I think that we'll probably lead off here with a guy that you actually have not seen in Myrtle Beach, starting off a little more difficult for you. But I think we can't not start with Cade Horton because assuming that he gets assigned to Myrtle Beach, he was the first round pick last year. He's the guy. Really excited to see what Cade Horton has to offer, and I think that doing it in Myrtle Beach is going to be super fun.
No, I think you're right. Super excited to see him. I know he's got an electric slider and just a great story. I think a really intriguing story. And the fact that, he's this great pitcher who's a first rounder, but we don't really have a ton of numbers on him because he was, a two-way guy at Oklahoma and didn't really catch fire until the College World Series and that postseason run. When we talk about that slider and how good it is, and just doing research, he didn't discover that slider until the Big 12 tournament, and he learned it from a teammate. So I just think it's a really intriguing story. And I think Max talked about it, but saw him at the backfields in spring training, and he looked good during his outing. But yeah, I think him starting in Myrtle Beach, I'm hoping that happens because just seeing him get, innings early on in the season, coming off that great College World Series run last year with Oklahoma is going to be really intriguing. And I'm excited to see him. I mean, he's, a first rounder and somebody who's definitely going to catch some eyeballs.
He's got that big starting pitcher build, absolutely. Mm-hmm. But we know at the low A level, guys aren't going 6+ innings typically in low A. So we probably shouldn't expect that from Cade Horton, especially coming off he didn't throw a whole lot of innings last year, coming off his injury in college. So he didn't throw a whole lot of innings, and I don't think we should expect him this season to go 120, 140 innings. So they'll probably limit his outings. I'm sure to start off the year, 2-3 innings. 3 innings probably max to begin the year, don't you think?
Yeah, no, I think so. And I think that's going to be a question for a lot of the guys on this list is, just how far they're going to go. Are they going to, kind of Luke Little it and go 2 innings max, or just what's going to happen? I put some feelers out last year once Horton was drafted. I was kind of wondering if he was going to come to us, but everybody said, he pitched enough in college, he's going to stay at the complex for a little bit and maybe hit Myrtle Beach next year. But just a really interesting story. And Just electrifying stuff from what I've seen on the TV so far. So hopefully he stops in Myrtle Beach. Hopefully not for long. Hopefully
Yeah.
that track goes up. But I'd love for him to stop here to start off his Cubs organization.
I think there's a very good chance that we even see him up in South Bend to start off the year. I think that because the Cubs drafted so many college arms in last year's draft, there will be some of these guys. We covered Brandon Birdsell on last week's episode. I think he's a guy that could start in Myrtle Beach. He could start in South Bend. Cade Horton's another one of those guys. I think Connor Noland is another guy drafted out of Arkansas. I have him projected as going to Myrtle Beach, but like it's always good getting SEC starting pitchers in Myrtle Beach, right? Like those are like they feel like Wiley vets and they haven't thrown a single pro ball inning yet.
Oh, they just come in with so much professionalism. And Nolan is a guy that kind of the opposite, threw a ton last year, over 100 innings, just had a total workload. But he's definitely a guy that I'm interested in possibly seeing coming out of the SEC, and also throws a great slider. And we know another guy from Arkansas who had a great slider, and Jake Reindl. So if that's the bar there, I think we're kind of shaping up for a good pitcher coming.
Nolan doesn't have as good of hair as Jake, though.
And nobody does. I don't think really any. So I saw Jake at spring training during the South Bend ring ceremony, which I didn't even mention. That was great to see. Really happy for those guys. Happy they ended their year with a Midwest League championship. But hey, Reinald's hair's looking good, as it always is. It just keeps getting better. So I don't know what products. He told me some products a couple of years ago. I don't know if they've changed. I don't know if he's kept it the same, but the flow is still flowing.
So who's got? All right, so Reindl has the best hair. I'd say that Frankie Scalzo probably has the best, had the best facial hair, right?
Yeah. So Frankie's kept the mustache, but he kind of got rid of that long hair that he had.
You're right. Yeah.
Talked with him, did an interview with him when I was in Arizona, and he said that the Cubs basically gave everybody a Wednesday to themselves, and Frankie just got a haircut. He's like, you can't leave me alone with that much free time. So he just goes out and gets a haircut. Now, it's interesting for Frankie because I talked with him in April or May last year, right in the middle of the season. And he told me, he's like, no mullet, no mustache. Frankie does not pitch well. So he must have some extra confidence coming into this year that he chopped off the long hair.
I feel like it's interesting down at low A because you get a lot of super young guys there. So there's not a whole lot of actual good facial hair. So when you get a guy like Frankie Scott, he really stands out when he's got the good mustache going. Because there's a lot of young guys that can't grow it out,
That's you know what, dude? Haven't thought about that. That is a step in the development process that really hasn't registered yet in my mind. I will tell you though, James Triantos did have a pretty rocking mustache in the middle of last year, and he actually, when the Cubs production guys came to do his Cubs on Deck episode, he was rocking that mustache, which I'm absolutely a huge fan of. So he's got it going for his young age.
You're about the ginger stash, huh?
Oh yeah, no, it made him play well.
All right, let's get to a couple starting pitchers that will likely start as starting pitchers this year. But again, it's the weird multiple innings. It could be a multi-inning reliever, just a few inning starter. Guys that showed. Let's start with Michael Arias, who he showed some potential last year, flashed some potential. Also had some bouts where he really struggled to find the zone. But he looks like just an electric arm, like a super loose arm. We saw some highlights of him down in spring training throwing a bullpen and just cranking up the velo. And it's just he's a former infielder, and he throws like a former infielder.
Yeah, no, you're right. It came up as a shortstop and now is on the mound, but kind of putting out my feelers in spring training. You said it, Greg. Electric is kind of the word that floats around with his arm. He's got high velocity. And, before we did this, I was going back and watching some games from last year because, Arias didn't throw a lot for us. So kind of had to refresh my mind of what does it look like. And he's got a pretty solid changeup in there as well. So work on that fastball, work on the changeup, hopefully develop some more pitches. He's a young guy, but you're right, kind of throws a little bit like an infielder, still getting in that pitching range of motion. But he's a player that I'm excited to see what potential they can tap into this year on the mound as a starter.
Yeah, and in the same breath, Cohen Moreno is another guy that came up, and he was part of that 2020 draft class. He was a fifth rounder, which the 2020 draft class was just such a wild time. That was such a wild year. Freak athlete. Like Michael Arias is a guy that was obviously a former infield, so he's a really good athlete. Cohen Moreno is a freak, in the best way possible. He's a really good athlete. Went on the mound, and I think he was struggling to find his the ability to repeat his delivery while on the mound at Myrtle Beach in his few outings. But he has flashes. Every once in a while, he'll just pop a fastball that finds the black, or he'll drop a changeup in there that's really good. I'm really excited to see what Cohen Moreno can do this year.
The talent's there. He's just got
Yeah.
to find the consistency, and he just looked so uncomfortable last year. And it's tough coming up in the middle of the year to a full season affiliate, especially coming off the injuries that he's had in the past, and was just trying to find a rhythm and really couldn't. Can we find the consistency with Cohen? But you're right, the athleticism, I mean, is off the charts. I think he was a former cross country runner, so he's in great shape. That's no question. But just trying to see if he can throw those pitches for strikes. He was missing the zone and missing the zone bad. And when he was hitting the zone, he was getting beaten around a little bit. So,
yeah.
Just going to see how that development kind of takes off. I'm excited for Cohen. I think that we kind of wash away 2022. He gets some experience, and gets kind of his cup of coffee at the end of the year. But I think 2023 is going to be a big takeoff year for him.
I mean, the Cubs development staff has done an incredible job of like developing pitchers. We've talked about that on this podcast plenty. And I think that last year's pitching staff, all entirely starting in Myrtle Beach, entirely going up to South Bend, is like a really good example because there's great coaches in Myrtle Beach to assist with that development.
Yeah, it's obviously it's bittersweet. Every broadcaster is going to tell you that when they get moved up. But seeing that whole starting rotation go, like we're all happy for them. I mean, it's great, but we're like, oh man, I loved watching these guys pitch. But yeah, I mean, the development is just it's great in Myrtle Beach, and they still. I mean, when I was in Mesa for spring training, they speak so highly of Clayton Mortensen, and just how well Morty works with the pitchers. So I'm excited for BK and Max to meet Morty this upcoming year as he goes up to South Bend, and for Morty to kind of be with that group of pitchers that was here last year, and he continues to work with them. And Morty did tell me, so I caught up with him at spring training, and he said, like, a lot of the arms at the end of last year in Myrtle Beach that were struggling with location have taken big jumps. Cohen being one of those, Gregory Montano being another one, like all those guys that just were really struggling at the end of last year have really kind of taken off and had a good offseason. So that was encouraging.
Yeah, I think that transitions well when you mention Gregory Montano, because the bullpen is super interesting in Myrtle Beach, like super interesting. So I think this is typically the case every year where you got guys in that bullpen that you in the low A level that you don't really know as as prospect followers. Even the guys, even the people that follow prospects to insane degrees like me, like still are unfamiliar with some of the names in the Myrtle Beach bullpen. Gregory Montano was electric, and him and Alfredo Zaraga, you mentioned earlier, were two guys that like really popped as I was watching them throw out of the bullpen last year in Myrtle Beach. I want to get into some of the more college arms, but I want you to talk about Montano a little bit if you got anything on him.
Well, first off, I mean, you mentioned Zaraga again, my favorite pitcher. I mean, that guy was awesome. Just electric coming out of the bullpen. He had that closer feel and just came up and threw gas. So he was fun to watch. But Montano, again, another guy that struggled with location, got himself into trouble. He had one really tough outing at the end of the year. I think it was against Augusta, and gave up, I think it was 6 earned runs on only 1 hit, but he walked 5 and hit a batter. So he's got stuff. He's got velocity as well. And talking with our manager, Buddy Bailey, Buddy likes him. He thinks that Gregory can develop into being a big leaguer at some point. It's just going to take some teaching. So 2023 could be a big year for Montano as well, and just trying to find the zone. But like I said, Morty said that those guys last year have really taken big steps in the offseason. Montano is one of those guys. So a guy that I'm definitely excited to watch in 2023, and just kind of how he progressed, after not ending last year like he wanted to.
Great name too, by the way.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Matt Peters. We can transition into some of the college guys. I know you love Matt Peters' story, and I mean he's got some electric arm too.
Well, being a fellow Indiana guy, a fellow Hoosier, I have to love Matt Peters' story. But he came up with us last year through, I think, an inning at the end of the year, and then went back down. I think it might have been an injury. I'm not sure. That's not totally confirmed. I have no idea. I think that's what I heard. But great story. Where he's like 5'7" in high school, goes to college, ends up at Ivy Tech, has this huge growth spurt, finds out that he can throw over 100. And that was like, I had no idea Ivy Tech had a baseball team until I saw his story and kind of read about it. And I was like, oh, I thought it was an online school. I had no idea that these guys had a team. But yeah, so he comes to Myrtle and throws 1 inning, and I don't even think I got to get the story out. Like, it was a very fast inning. He was done, and then next thing you know, he's back in Arizona. So, I mean, look, any guy that's going to throw up near 100 is going to have a chance. And he is one of those guys, has grown up to 6'4", has size, and is definitely, I think Myrtle Beach is a place that he could flourish and just work on building other pitches besides that high-velocity fastball.
Yeah, and I was the same way when he got drafted, because I think when he was drafted, it was announced as not Ivy Tech. It was announced as like Indiana Tech or something like that. And I was like, and then I did some research, and it was Ivy Tech, which is I understood Ivy Tech as a JUCO with like multiple different locations across the state of Indiana, right?
Yeah, it's all over the place. Yeah,
because I remember like when I went to school at Ball State, there was an Ivy Tech in Muncie, and there's an Ivy Tech in like just all over the state. There's multiple Ivy Techs, and I was like, why is this guy drafted out of like what campus was he at? Like what's the deal with this? So it was just that was a really cool story, and now Ivy Tech, I believe they broke down their baseball team. They no longer have a team. So they got a guy drafted out of Ivy Tech and now no longer have a baseball team at Ivy Tech.
Well, I mean, you get that guy drafted and you get some publicity, and maybe that's all they needed. But Nate, I was going to ask, maybe all the satellite campuses like play each other. Like, I have no idea.
Honestly, maybe, yeah. I don't know. I need to get over to Fort Wayne's Ivy Tech campus. Apparently,
it's right. Heard they got some talent over there.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe I can try out. Maybe I can exhaust my eligibility. All right, 2 other college guys. You got to see a little bit of Grant Kipp because he was thrown out of the rotation last year in Myrtle Beach for a little bit. And then Brody McCullough is another guy you got to see a little bit of. And I bring up these guys, and I'm kind of curious about your perspective on those two specifically working in the bullpen, because we know they can probably work as starters. What's your kind of view of those two guys, especially Kipp, because you saw a little bit more of him?
Yeah, I saw Kipp toward the back end of last year, and to this day, he's the only player that I've done prep on looking on his LinkedIn page, which makes sense because he's from Yale. But yeah, ends last year as a starter for us. Actually started game 1 of the playoffs against Charleston, and it was just kind of crazy because he is immediately thrown into the Carolina League playoffs, and a month earlier he's in the Cape Cod Baseball League throwing there. So just right into the fire. But no, I think that kind of suits him. He didn't really throw too many long outings with us at the end of the year last year, and like I said before our conversation, Greg, I was going back and watching games from last year, and Grant Kipp's got a pretty good off-speed pitch. I mean, he's got some stuff there, and I think we can definitely work with that, and also has a pretty solid fastball as well. So and moving him to the bullpen, I think would be a great idea. Add to the depth there, and see if you have something, as well as Brody McCullough as well. He was a starter at Wingate, Division II, the highest drafted player from that school. And started games with the Pelicans at the end of last year too, and had some pretty solid outings. And he showed good velocity on his fastball, some good off-speed pitches to mix in with it. And he was the pitcher at the end of last year that really didn't struggle with location. He was hitting the zone consistently toward the end of last season, while everybody, it just seems like, was not. So I think McCullough getting that experience now coming into this year, possibly out of the bullpen, is going to be a solid thing.
I love when pitchers do something that's quirky, right? Like whether it's a weird pitch like a Jake Reindl or Zach Lee slider, or they come out of a weird arm slot like DJ Hers, or just something wonky. I think that makes a guy stand out, and doing something that other batters are not like familiar with and they don't feel comfortable in seeing is always a positive. And Brody McCullough has kind of that weird arm action, right? Where he's kind of like herky jerky a little bit. I don't know how to. I can't really describe it in words, but he's just kind of herky jerky, and I think that quirk might really allow him to take off, whether it's in Myrtle Beach or South Bend, the lower levels of the minors this year. Rack up some strikeouts, like some serious strikeouts for him.
Well, he's got kind of a crunch too. That's kind of when I was watching him, that kind of was the first word that came to mind, where he comes up and kind of hunches down a little bit. He also separates the ball in the glove back into it and then throws, which I think is something really interesting and something that I haven't seen a lot of. So I think you're right. Yeah, that kind of gives batters a different angle to see things from. Just switches up the timing a little bit. So yeah, I think that can definitely add to his profile.
There was that I think it was Pitching Ninja came out with something. It was when a couple of years ago when the Rays were in the playoffs, and he had on a clock the arm slots for all of the pitchers that had thrown for the Rays in a certain series, in the divisional series or something like that. And it was literally it was a perfect like clock. They had an arm slot at every single like time on the clock.
Yeah.
And it's like that, those like different things a lot. Like even if a guy doesn't have the best stuff, if his arm slot looks different, if it's a righty's coming from over the top, and then you got a lefty come sidearm back-to-back innings, like it doesn't matter how good your stuff is. It's a different look, and it takes a full inning for a batter to like kind of pick up on what they're seeing. You know what I mean? So like any quirks that we can get in this organization, I love to see that.
No, 100%. I think it's unique. It changes up the angle and just really keeps the batters guessing. And that's kind of the name of the game.
All right, man. You want to go ahead and transition to some hitters because there's some damn good ones on this team that's going to be this year.
Well, we ended with some solid ones, so hopefully we start with some good ones too.
Yeah. So you had some really exciting players come up at the tail end of last year, and one of them is the guy that I think I've said for years that Cole Roeder has the most beautiful swing in the system, and I'm not quite ready to dethrone him. But when we were talking with Cole on this podcast earlier this offseason, I asked him specifically about Moises Ballesteros and his swing, and Cole himself said it's a beautiful swing. So let's talk a little bit about Moises and that beautiful swing and his work behind the plate, because I know that he was putting in quite a bit of work behind the plate to try to get better defensively for sure.
Yeah, I think if catcher's the way to go, I think he can play that position. He's got, well, first off, physicality, but second off, his arm is solid throwing out to second base. And he showed that a few times in Myrtle Beach. Just a gamer behind the plate. We had a long relay throw. I think it was against the Mudcats at the end of last year, and gets down to Ballesteros. He goes diving in for the tag, and they end up getting the runner. So he's all over the place behind the plate. I like him back there. But you talk about the swing. And it's gorgeous. I mean, just seeing his home runs that he hit last year, that's a pretty left-handed swing, very fluid, a one-arm finish, one-handed finish. And you've talked to Stephen Polikoff, who's now in the Arizona Complex League full-time. He's kind of the hitting coordinator that's roving around each affiliate now. He was our hitting coach last year. And when we get Ballesteros in the beginning of August, I go to Paulie and I say, "Hey man, what do we got on Moises? What do you think about him?" And I mean, Paulie, he loves to hype up his guys. And so we're in the batting cages and he goes, "This dude's legit. Like there is some serious pop in that bat." And, Ballesteros takes batting practice, it's pretty impressive. And then he comes up his first at bat. I think it was the first pitch he saw off the batter's eye in center field. Yeah. And we're like, all right, we got a serious power threat right now in the lineup behind the plate, along with Ethan Hearn. And he actually finished. He started his season with a home run. He finished his season with a home run in our playoff game. He homered his last at bat in a pinch hit appearance. But yeah, it's fluid, man. And he's also pretty disciplined at the plate. Doesn't strike out too much. Doesn't chase too much, which is something that I like to see. I know the coaching staff likes to see as well. Just looking back at just some of the replays of his swing, it's kind of a weird comp. But me growing up as an Angels fan, Garrett Anderson, left-handed hitter. Very smooth swing. That's kind of what I saw a little bit in Ballesteros. So he hit a few home runs, and Ballesteros kind of does this skip thing when he leaves the box. And Garrett kind of had the same thing. So
that's a good one.
I saw a little bit of that. Ballesteros has probably about 50 pounds on Garrett Anderson, but look, they're both pretty left-handed swings, and I love the look at it. Just soar, man. It's awesome.
I hadn't heard that one before. I don't know if you said that on the broadcast last year, but yeah, that's good. I dig that.
I came up with that today. Literally today. I was watching some Ballesteros highlights, and I was like, man, that looks like Gary. Like just the one-handed finish. It just kind of looks like him. I don't know.
I'll try to pull up a side by side here because that's a good. I like that. Yeah, you're right. Ballesteros he was. I think that Pedro was the youngest guy on the team last year, but I think Ballesteros was the second youngest, and he just like worked at bats too, right? Like he showed off the beautiful swing, but like he wasn't striking out at a crazy clip. He was drawing walks. He was working really good at bats. Like at the plate, man, like he doesn't, I think that he's good enough at the plate as of right now that he doesn't even necessarily need to stay behind the plates defensively. He can go to DH or first base and still hold his own with the bat to like be that good offensively. You know what I mean?
No, I think you're right. And I kind of see that maybe down the line, especially with how many catchers the Cubs organization has right now, possibly moving him to that first base corner spot. And the DH role, but you got to keep that bat in the lineup. And I mean, you're right. He would battle and battle and battle. And he actually laid a few bunts down during the season as well. So he's just kind of this guy that just has so much hitting talent, makes good contact, has a lot of pop. And we're gonna see how long we have him in Myrtle Beach, because if he's hitting like he was last year, I could see him going up pretty quickly.
Yeah, not as fast as Ethan though.
No, obviously not. No, Ethan's the fastest catcher in the system. Not even close.
What you mentioned, Steve Pollock. You got any good Polly stories that you can share on the air here?
Polly. Well, he was kind of our translator that I used for, we did interviews with Alcantara, and Paulie was there translating, and he was just so fun to talk to just at batting practice because he was always so hyped up about everyone. And
I love talking to that man.
No, in your article, I don't know when it came out, but he was like, you were talking about talking to him. And it's like, hey, it makes me want to run through a brick wall right now.
Yeah,
like, it's just kind of how it is.
Like he had me, like when I was talking with him, like he had me thinking that I could go out there and hit like low A pitching. Like I haven't swung a baseball bat in 5 years, and I feel like I could hit because he told me I can. You know what I mean? Like
he puts that fire in you, and the players love that. Like they love the confidence that he kind of instills in them. He had the phrase "birds to the moon." That was the phrase that was all over the place last year, especially in the first half when everything was happening, and that was kind of the rallying cry.
I've actually got a story. So for that interview that I did with him over at Northside Bound, that would have been earlier this off season that I wrote that. So listeners out there, go check it out. But I talked with him on the phone for multiple times for half hour, like a while, right, to put that article together. The first time I talked to him, I spoke with him for a while, and then about an hour later, I get a text from him, and he just goes, "By the way, birds to the moon."
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That's incredible, man. I love it. All right.
No, I just want to say, super excited for him. I'm glad that he's kind of roving around now and giving each affiliate his input on hitting. But birds of the moon. I actually had him do an interview with minor league baseball after one of the games. It was a huge win. I can't remember which one it was, but minor league baseball does an interview with him, and I don't hear the interview. It's just the reporter and Paulie. But I read the story the next day, and what do you know? We got a birds to the moon quote in a minorleaguebaseball.com article. So it was everywhere. That was the mojo. That was the swag that we were rolling with, and I loved it.
He's going to do a great job in his new role. It's going to be terrific. All right, man. So we talked about Moises. Let's talk about Pedro Ramirez. Let's skip to him because another guy that's super, like so young. He was 18 when he debuted. The youngest guy in the system to make it to full season ball last year. And talk about a great hit tool in Pedro Ramirez. Like he's got it. It's now whether he's going to work the at bats that we see Moises Ballesteros work, like not quite as much, but like we know the dude can hit like with any of them. I'm curious about your take on Pedro if we see him back in Myrtle Beach this year.
Yeah, he's kind of a typical 18-year-old who's aggressive in at bats and is swinging at really anything in the zone. Didn't strike out a ton, very plate disciplined in his time in Myrtle Beach, had 11 hits, all of them were singles. So maybe we can see some more drive next year, but I loved when I saw from him. He really sprays the field, hits well from the right side, hits well from the left, just kind of spreads that field out all over the place. And his first game at the end of August, he had a 3-hit ball game and a line drive to right, a line drive up the middle, and a line drive to left. So he was just, covering all aspects of the field. And there's a lot of development. I think we really haven't seen what the glove can do just yet. Not doubting it at all, but just seeing how he plays that second base, more consistently. But yeah, a really young guy that's got a lot of potential and really held his own in his, I think, 41 at bats he got in Myrtle Beach last year. He was very solid, especially in postseason play as well.
The bat reminds me a little bit of like when Yohendrick Pinango was that young, was at that level, right? Where he's kind of spraying the ball all over the field, using the opposite field. Like Yohendrick was using left field more, like significantly more than right field when he was in that level, Yeah. So that reminds me a little bit of Pedro Ramirez. And then with Yohendrick, it was like, all right, let's see if he can start to develop that power, get some pull side power going. I think that's the same story with Pedro.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I'm fine with him not slugging a ton for a second baseman. But he's a guy that's going to get on base and he's going to give you a chance in any ball game. So yeah, really looking forward to having Pedro back in Myrtle Beach and seeing what he can turn into.
Is it time for the comeback season tour for Reggie Preciado? Because he had he had just an interesting season last year in 2022, right? Where he got called out, where he started the year with Myrtle Beach. When he was there, didn't perform well at all, right? He just got up to a really, really slow start. He was striking out, I think, almost 45% of his at-bats. Just a really rough go of it. For a super young guy, obviously, it was tough because he was facing college arms, guys that were the Connor Nolans of the world, right? The SEC arms as a 19-year-old in full season ball. Then he unfortunately goes down with the injury, and then when he comes back, he's returning from injury, so that's tough. It was just all in all a rough season for Preciado. But honestly, like I don't think it's time to jump off the Preciado bandwagon yet because of just the quirkiness that was his 2022 season.
I think we forget that Preciado in April was swinging at everything, striking out at a very high clip. In May, he hit the ball pretty solidly, a 284 average. And it really kind of sprung from one game. He went, I think, 4 for 5 or 4 for 6 against the Salem Red Sox. We won 24-6. And he had 6 RBI. And that was kind of a big breakout game for him at the beginning of the month that got him going. Had a solid month, kind of slipped a little bit in June, and then got injured. But I think it says a lot about Reggie that he was able to come back from that so quickly and have at-bats at the end of 2022. Really kind of shows you his work ethic and how he wants to get back to playing. But I think we saw a lot of improvement after he had that stint in the Arizona Complex League. He comes back to Myrtle Beach, is not swinging as much at balls outside of the zone. But this will be a big year for him. He gets the experience in single A last year. He kind of knows what to expect. And he'll be, an experienced guy in a lineup of possibly not a lot of experienced players at this level. So he'll be a leader in the clubhouse. And yeah, I'm excited to see what he can do. I think this is like everybody, it's going to be a big year for Preciado in 2023, and just kind of put last year behind him.
Like low key, something that we forget about is that Preciado actually logged the most innings at shortstop last year in Myrtle Beach, like of all the positions. And I think that we always think like, oh, he's long term a third baseman, maybe a first baseman, maybe a corner outfield, like not a shortstop, right? Like we long term think that, and I still believe that. But I think it says something about his athleticism that he was logging the most innings of any position at shortstop last year. I think that to have Buddy Bailey believe in you in that way is huge.
Yeah, shortstop and second base was kind of what he was playing last year. And he's just so tall and lanky and can really move easily around the infield. So, yeah, to have that trust that he's able to get guys out is a really big thing. So, we'll see where he starts off. I mean, I know we're going to talk about Christian Hernandez and what, possibly where he's going to be. But, Preciado, he's a versatile player, and he can really play wherever you need him to.
Let's talk about Christian because it's I feel like this has been a long time. Like he's only been he's still super young, right? He's still a really young kid. But it feels like he's been in the system for a long time because we knew that the big thing with Christian Hernandez was we knew the signing was happening way before it became official. I think that he was the international free agent period got shifted because of COVID. So the signing period is weird. We knew the Cubs were signing Hernandez. They actually did sign him, and then we were waiting for him to come up to Myrtle Beach last year. That never happened, but I go back and forth with Christian because last year he didn't put up like eye-popping numbers in the Arizona Complex League, but never take the ACL stats too seriously. I think that especially for a guy coming up stateside for the first time in his entire life, that's like a big adjustment for the person in addition to the baseball player. You know what I mean? So I'm excited for Christian Hernandez to get his debut in full season ball, kind of show off that freak athleticism. We talk about Preciado being kind of athletic. Hernandez is a freak athlete. Really excited to see him manning shortstop for the Birds. Yeah,
Greg, you mentioned it. I don't remember who I was talking. It was a player. I can't remember who it was, but we were talking about Arizona, and they say, Arizona, the complex league is a weird place because you're trying to work on things that are so specific, and you're not really paying attention to your numbers. I actually think about Liam Spence started off the year with us, really struggled. I mean, mightily. Could not hit the ball very well. Goes down to Arizona, is still putting up not very good numbers, comes back to us and hits 2 home runs in the first week. And, we hadn't seen that power from him all year. So it is a different place where you're working on different things, and it's numbers that you can't really take into account and take out of context. But you hear so much about Christian Hernandez, like you said. I mean, we've been hearing about him for so long. And last year I was kind of putting out feelers when are we getting Christian? Is he coming up this year? When, are we gonna see him this year? And Rachel Folden was actually our hitting coach for 3 or 4 games. She came up from Arizona, filled in for Paulie for a few games, and I did an interview with her, and I asked her, just how's he doing, and she said, he's doing a great job. It's first experience in the States, getting used to that, but the athleticism just drips off of him. There's a lot of talent there, and there's a lot of reasons to be excited for Kristen Hernandez, who I think is number 10 in the MLB pipeline, top 10 or top prospects for the Cubs. So there's a lot that we're kind of waiting on. Obviously you don't want to put too much pressure on him, but it's going to be fun to watch him just get televised for the first time.
I feel like he's had that pressure on him since the day he signed, since before he signed. Like we had, I think, unreasonable expectations that he would make it up to Myrtle Beach last year, right? I think that standard practice is that he spent 2021 in the DSL. He spent 2022 in the Arizona Complex League, and now he's up to full season ball in 2023. That's more standard. And I think that we wanted it to happen. We wanted him to make it up to Myrtle Beach because we wanted to see him on MILB TV. But it was probably unreasonable to expect that.
Well, yeah, and talking with Rachel too, she's like, he signed for a lot of money, so there's going to be some added pressure there. But he's still a really young guy, and just has a lot that we're going to be watching this upcoming year. So another player that Cubs fans are going to be excited to watch, and I can't wait to meet him, get his story, and see what he does on the field for the Birds.
Yeah. Is there anybody else that the thing that I kind of preface this is that we don't know what the rosters are going to look like in Myrtle Beach more than any other team. Is there anyone that's kind of caught your eye as someone that you kind of expect to be on this Myrtle Beach roster that you enjoyed calling last year, you have on your radar for this year?
Well, if they start, I mentioned him. If they start Liam Spence back in Myrtle Beach, I know he's an older college guy, went to Tennessee, but if they start him back in Myrtle Beach, I think he's going to do very well. Already got that single A experience last year. Like I said, struggled in the first half, came back to us at the end of last year and just was a completely different hitter. Had a couple of home runs, had some power that we hadn't seen before. If he comes back to Myrtle Beach, I'm excited to see the progress that he's made. In the off season.
Is Liam Spence a vibe? Is he a big time Australian vibe?
Oh, 100%. And he's such a big clubhouse guy. The guys love him in the clubhouse. Like, he is super fun to be around. I did one of our bingo drive shows in the pink Corvette or the pink convertible with him last year, and he was just really fun to talk to and just a super nice guy. Loved getting to watch him play. So, if he starts at Myrtle Beach, I think, and he played in the World Baseball Classic for Team Australia. So he was there. And I remember telling Hunter when we were in Arizona, I was like, look, Australia is in the same pool as Japan. We could possibly get a Shohei Ohtani versus Liam Spence matchup, which, is scary to think about.
The 2 greatest players in the world.
100%. And Liam is going to have to, grow up pretty quickly there in that at bat. And we'll see what happens. I don't think
what an incredible story to be able to tell your kids down the line, though. Like, that's I faced off against Shohei Ohtani. I remember specifically when the Cubs drafted Liam Spence because I was reading about him. Like, he was a draft pick out of Tennessee and really like a defensive specialist at shortstop at Tennessee. Really good contact rates when he was over there. And I was like, I'm already excited. I'm already about this guy. And I was reading deeper into him. I was like, oh, he's Australian. Like, that's fun. And then I was reading even deeper. Like, he was a JUCO bandit too. And I was like, this guy has every vibe you could ever imagine, like, wanting in a baseball player. Like, regardless of the performance on the field, like you said, like I think that like that clubhouse presence is huge. And I love guys like that. They're easy to root for.
Yeah, no, 100%. And he really credited Rachel Folden when he went back to Arizona, and they kind of retooled his swing. He really spoke highly of her and the adjustments that she made. But, there's Liam. I know you guys mentioned Chabers on the podcast. I don't know, just what that outfield's going to look like if Chabers comes back to us. But your swing comp of Bryce Harper, I think, is spot on. I love that comparison just because, Parker's got a good swing and he flips the ball the other way so easily.
Yeah.
So he's a guy. And then Jacob Wetzel, who could possibly come back to us again. But he had stints last year where he was making such good contact and had great power, and you just want him to do that consistently. And if he can do that, he can move up pretty fast because his defense is really good. I mean, he plays a great right field. It's just a matter of, is that bat going to come around on a consistent basis, where they can move him up. But he's another player that we've seen now for 2 years that has really made a lot of improvements in those 2 years.
Yeah, like this isn't like a 1-for-1 comp for Wetzel, but there's a lot of like things that remind me of Jonathan Perlaza when I watch Jacob Wetzel play. I think that the bats that he puts together reminds me of Perlaza. At this level, like Wetzel strikes out less than what Perlaza does, but I think even down to their build, right? They're both linebackers. Both could be starting linebackers for the Bears. Like I think that like even down to that, like they remind me of each other quite a bit.
I got Cole Calhoun on Jacob Wetzel because they have, I mean, you put them side by side. That swing is identical. Both red hair, like it's just, both stocky guys. Like that's
you're giving me some work to do with these side by side videos. So you keep like throwing them out here. I'm like, oh, I guess I got to throw that together.
Well, dude, they're all former Angels, so I mean, that's just kind of how it is.
All right, there are quite a few names that I want to just kind of name drop here. Partially for multiple reasons. One, because I don't have a whole lot of knowledge on these dudes, right? There are a lot of Arizona guys. You might have some more. I'll kind of kick it to you after I list some of these guys off to see if there's anybody you want to kind of comment on. But there's several guys here that I'm taking this episode as an opportunity to talk about everybody else, right? Because we've gone through the system at this point. There's guys that I'm going to list off here that probably will start in Arizona, but we will get to see in Myrtle Beach at some point this year, if not on opening day. So I'll run through some of these names. Just want to name drop more than anything. We already talked about Gregory Montano. Oliver Roque is another guy. Jackson Ferris is a guy that was a second-round draft pick last year. Part of the reason why the Cubs were able to get Jackson Ferris was because of the Cade Horton signing. Dom Hambly was another late-round pick back in 2021. Luis Rujano was kind of a steal in last year's draft. Another guy with some quirky arm actions. He posted some videos on Instagram this offseason where he has a really nasty slider from Rujano. Excited to see him in 2023 in Myrtle. Arian Rodriguez was another draft pick recently that should be fun on the mound. Marino Santi. Did he get some time in Myrtle last year or no? Santi?
No, we didn't see him. I think
Okay.
I think in spring training he's been throwing some games with that Myrtle squad, but we didn't actually get him last year.
Yeah, we might see him on opening day on the Myrtle roster, if not pretty soon after. And then Mason McGuire is the last arm I want to mention because Greg Zumak, co-host of the podcast here, is all about the Mason McGuire hype train. And Little Mac has something to him, man. That splitter is going to be fun to watch in Myrtle.
Yeah, that's the one thing when I was reading about McGuire is the splitter is kind of what pops out at you. But I love the story of the Cubs, getting him just regardless of his name, right? Being the son of Mark McGuire. But they put that aside and they just sign him for what he actually has. And I mean, look, anytime you get the chance to call the son of Mark McGuire is going to be great. So I'm looking forward to him potentially stopping by. But in a splitter is a pitch that we don't see too often in Myrtle Beach with just kind of the development and where guys are at. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he's got on the mound. And then you mentioned Jackson Ferris as well. High school teammates with Drew Gray, who could also potentially come to the Pelicans last year. This year. He's coming off of a Tommy John surgery. But I just reading on those two guys, both of them talking about how Jackson's got the best stuff I've ever seen. Drew's got the best stuff I've ever seen. So when you got that kind of dynamic, I think that's awesome. So hopefully we get them at the same time and have some fun, have some fun on that pitching staff.
Yeah, I failed to mention Drew Gray when we were talking about starting pitchers. I don't know. Again, Drew, because he's coming off that Tommy John, still rehabbing to a certain degree. So I don't know if he'll be on the opening day roster. He very well could be. Either way, I'm really excited to see him spin the ball in that rotation because I mean he's been. I think Lance Brozdowski over at Marquee has talked numerous times on the way that Drew Gray can spin his slider and his curveball, and that's really and fastball for that matter. So that's super exciting.
Yeah, and he's a really well-spoken guy too. Lance did an interview with him on Marquee, and just really good answers, really well-spoken guy, and he's ready for full season baseball when he gets there. And then just what's the inning limit going to be? Coming off of Tommy John surgery, and how far are they going to let him go at the single A level? I think those are all questions that we're going to have answered.
All right, so a few position players here that I want to rattle off. One is Andy Garriola, first of all, he's an ODU guy who the Cubs love drafting Old Dominion guys. Right. He just feels like a dude that's going to spend the year in Myrtle Beach and kind of hit the crap out of the ball and just be a vibe. I'm digging the vibe guys, and Andy feels like that.
Hey, that's half the battle right there. If you can come up with some ego and some swag, and you got
Yeah.
some vibe to
There,
you,
there,
then
there was a picture that Rich Biesterfeld took, I think last year after he was drafted, and he was rocking like 3 different chains, no shirt underneath the jersey. Like, I'm about it. I'm about it, man. All right, so we got Gariola. We got Kashawn Collier I believe he was the last round draft pick in last year's draft. So the Cubs didn't get Cam Collier, but they got Kashawn Collier. He'll be in the outfield for Myrtle this year. Christian Moore probably will start the year in the Myrtle outfield, would be my guess. And he put up some really good numbers, both with the bat and on the base pass with some stolen bases last year in the complex league. Chris Pasiola is a guy who's on my top prospect list. He'll probably be manning some third base, some shortstop, some second base later on in the year for Myrtle. And then Jefferson Rojas is a guy that on our draft show, on the Cubs on Deck draft show, Brian Smith specifically called out Jefferson Rojas as a guy that might break out this year in the system. So any of those names stand out to you?
well, you talk about breaking out, and that's kind of he's been a favorite over at the Cubs complex in Mesa for a breakout season. So, looking for some big things out of him. You talk about Collier, and when I was looking at Collier, just a lefty contact guy that has a lot of speed and kind of reminds you a little bit of what Darius Hill is, and just gets on base, steals bases, just is kind of all over the place. So he's a guy that I'm excited to see. You talk about Pasiola being that 3rd round pick. Hopefully he gets to Myrtle at some point and we get to see him. But a lot of good names, that put up some solid numbers in Arizona if they played there, and are about to get their first experience in full season baseball.
Do you know off the top of your head how many players played in Myrtle Beach last year?
Oh man,
Really put you on the spot, but it was
60. Hold on, 63. 63 because the year before it was 64, and that was like a franchised record. So that's why I remember that. I'm not a freak. I'm not a numbers guy. I had to put it in the record book, and I believe it's 63.
That's the Weiderhaft sabermetrics right there.
Yeah.
Over under the amount of players used this year compared to last year.
Yeah, it just kind of depends on who obviously who we start with, because last year you could tell, okay, we're not going to end with these guys. Adam Lasky's not being here all year. Walker Powell's not going to be here all year. Like, you just kind of knew we're going to have a lot of transactions. This year I think we're going to start off with a young team, so I don't really see it being all that much. I think this team's going to stay together for a majority of the season.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think that this is a different. This team feels a whole lot different than last year, and not necessarily in a bad way. It just feels a lot different than what you guys started off with a year ago.
No, and you say that, and when I was talking with guys around Arizona, just kind of talking with people and seeing how good are we going to be this year. What's kind of the vibe? What are we getting? And they're like, well, you got some dudes coming your way. It's not going to be like last year. And I was like, of course it's not going to be like last year. Like, I know that we're not going to begin with Alcantara, PCA, Triantos all on the same roster. That's not going to happen. But we're going to have some young guys that are going to be fun to watch progress throughout the season. It's kind of like 2021. Like, 2021 was a young group that started out slow, but it was fun to watch them in July and August really put things together and finish out the year playing good baseball. So that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting, and I couldn't be more excited about it.
Yeah, I remember my former co-host Jimmy Nelligan. He was about that 2021 Pelicans team. Like, it was that was fun for other reasons. I remember he that's basically the only team that he watched in 2021 was that Myrtle Beach team. So
yeah, because I apologized to him for it, because he had to hear my voice too much, and I'm sure that got I'm sure the headaches were just raging in his head. But no, it was fun, man. Especially like Jordan Wogu, just the way that he just progressed that year, and he's building off that now in South Bend, which is awesome.
All right, man. Any more dudes you want to talk about? We talked about a lot of them.
I do want to mention one. There's a name that was kind of floating around the backfields, and I don't want to butcher it. I'll learn his name if he gets to Myrtle Beach. But Adon Sanchez. He's been kind of a guy I've heard his name. He's a dude. He's going to get to you at some point, and he's just hitting the ball really well. Catcher. So we'll see.
He's a big dude for not like Moises Ballesteros big. Like, he's for how young Sanchez is. And he was the guy that hit the home run in the Little League World Series that David Ross was calling the game for ESPN when he hit the home run, which I think, I know people know that story, but it's so cool. Like, that's a cool story.
No, it is. It's awesome. it's just that's great. And Paulie, that's a Paulie mention right there. So
Yeah, there you go.
Polikoff has name dropped him, and that means a lot.
I'll take whoever he's name dropping for sure. All right, man. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up the show here?
No, I'm just looking forward to it, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah.
Always
You want to
love
plug
coming
yourself?
on here. Yeah. So Twitter, Sam_Weiderhaft, Instagram @Weiderhaft. We got some good videos coming out from spring training, from our trip, a lot of interviews that we knocked down, just a lot of content stuff that we did over in Arizona. So that's all coming out on the Pelicans social media. And yeah, just excited. April 6th, opening day. We're actually going to be on marquee for that first game. So could not be more excited to start off the year with the Cubs fans, and just looking forward to it, man. It's going to be awesome.
Sweet. Sam, thank you so much for coming on. You and all the other broadcasters means a whole lot for you guys it means a whole lot to me for you guys to come on. It's always a blast, and we'll get you guys on throughout the season as the season wears on. So listeners out there, thank you for tuning in for our season previews episodes these past few weeks. Can't thank you guys enough for listening. It's been a blast. We will be back with more quote unquote normal episodes. Brian Smith will be back for the next show. So you guys get to hear Brian's voice instead of the four broadcasters. But we'll be back, and by the time we're back recording that episode, we'll have some Iowa Cubs baseball to talk about, which is kind of wild. So be sure to tune in 1 week from today, and thank you guys so much for listening. Rate, review, comments, all that stuff. Subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, all that good stuff. Can't thank you guys enough, and we'll talk to you guys soon.